All right, good morning, folks. So we are back today. After working on our throne and our menhirs in our previous casts, we now have these guys. So this is the Silent King in the middle, Cesaric, and his two minions that are going to be on the little balconies that are on the throne. Today, we're going to focus on getting all the base coats down. We're going to focus on the details that do need additional work, such as the bits of blackstone that are going to be like on here and that are going to be on here. And we'll see how far we get with those tasks. Eventually, we'll have to work on the cloak. So he does have quite a large cloak, which in the lore is actually the fleeced skin of one of the Satans. So we'll have to kind of think about what we want to do with that. But we do have our references, of course, which I'm going to bring up now. So here you can see the Silent King in the middle, and there's a bit of black stone right in the center of his staff. He does have some bits and pieces of gold on the staff, as do his minions. The minion on the left has a bit of black stone in the middle of his staff there, or I should say in the middle of the top part as well, just less. And I don't see any blackstone on the other minion. So we're going to work our way from the inside out today. This is going to make it, because we are working again with our makeup brush challenge here, this is going to make it a lot easier for me to be able to reach that spot without touching something I don't want to. So I am going to start here with the blackstone bits, and we're going to go ahead and paint them black. And that's going to be our starting point here. After those are black, I'm going to start getting the rest of the base coats onto these models, and we're going to continue on from there. So without further ado, I have clean water here today, and I have my palette here. I don't have the palette cam out. I think you folks have seen me mix up paint a few times at this point. So we're going to go ahead and pull our matte black, and that's going to get us a base coat onto the pieces that are about to be blackstone. Now, you will have noticed that these models actually have been primed with black, and then over that there is the Vallejo armor color, so it's a metal color that's on there. I was originally going to do these a little bit different. So that was just the zenithal of the metal color over it. But in this case, this is not a worry. It should just be considered to be black at this point, and I'm going to work up from there. So for the blackstone, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to get just a touch of water, just so this can flow a little easier, because this is not being dry brushed on. This is going to be actually just painted on. And so I'm going to paint this on here. I'm going to brace this with my finger, and I'm just going to paint some on. I don't want it to be super, super thick, but I do want to have a nice dark base coat here to work from. I'm going to make sure I don't touch the other side. Again, for this, you would probably be using a bit of a smaller brush, and that way you would not have such a chance of making a mistake. In this case, we're going to work with what we have. So that has been painted black there. I'm going to go ahead and pull this other guy. We will be doing these in batch. That's just going to be easier overall to work with. That way we get all of our colors consistent across these three guys. All right. So that is a very, very thin coat of black paint. I'm going to go ahead and grab that. It just left a little dot there. Let's take a look. So that's not going to be completely dry yet, and that is totally okay because we have plenty more to do. So since we have our black undercoat here for the stone, we're going to add another one too. I'd like that to be a stronger black color. We're going to start putting in our base coats here for our gold. And for gold on these three guys, we're going to actually build up in this order. Rhinox Hide, Steel Legion Drab, these are Citadel paints, Vallejo Tan Glaze, Then we're going to really push it with the Flash Glitz Yellow by Citadel. And then we're going to use this as our highlight, our first highlight. So Dorn Yellow. It's a very pale yellow. I do want these guys to be very cold. And then finally Matte White for our final highlights at the very, very tip top of everything. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some of our Rhinox Hide. And then I will come back to this black on there as I need to strengthen it. So I'm going to grab some Rhinox Hide. This does have some reds in it, but we're going to layer so much on top of this, it's not going to make the model warm. It's just going to give us a really nice base coat here. The other parts that are going to be black are actually going to be the staff, which I should have put on just now, and I'll go back to him in just a moment. But I'm going to start working on these guys by giving me a nice coat of Rhinox Hide everywhere that he's going to be golden in color. And just in case, I'm going to bring this back, and it looks like, yes, so all of his armor panels are going to be this color, but the pieces in between the armor are going to remain black, and that's what we're going to do here. So I'm going to go ahead and put some Rhinox Hide here. Going to get some of that off. That came on a little thick. There we are. Pull that there. And this is particularly challenging with this brush, but we will persevere here. So I'm trying to leave the areas that are not going to be gold. And so I'm going to come here. This panel here is going to be gold. And so this is really just base coating with this brush. This paint is fairly thinned down here. One of the nice benefits of having such a large brush here is that you really are not going to see a lot of the brush strokes here as I put this on. They're going to kind of be hidden because it's a soft brush. All right, that's looking good. Come in here and see what we can do here with his leg. And this is definitely going to be a kind of be ready to fix it if I need to. I do have a brush over here that's clean. That will allow me to grab any of this I need to and kind of fix it very quickly. So we're going to put this here because this long piece here is going to be gold. I'm going to get in here on his leg some more if I can. There we go. So we're going to have this armor panel here. But avoid this other piece. If I need to, I can try and clean this up, but this is going to get real interesting real fast if I make a lot of mistakes. So let's hope I don't do too much of that. This part of the staff will also be gold. And this is a nice thin down paint. You can see I actually had quite a lot of it on my brush, so I haven't had to go back for more of it yet. Being very careful just to get this where I want it. Coming to the back here, catching around the other side. Get this in there as well. We're base coating again so we can do our non-metallic gold. Being careful to avoid the joints here, which I'm going to leave dark. Let's see, it looks like this portion of his foot is also going to be gold. Actually, we're going to do his whole foot here. I thought about kind of where that joint looks like it's located. This is not going to be in our reference. It's just you're not going to be able to see it. So I have to make a decision. And my decision is that he'll have golden feet. Pulling that there. We do want to catch the backs of all of this. This shouldn't be terribly visible, but at the same time, I just want to make sure that if it is, it doesn't look like I just decided not to bother. But that might be a totally viable thing for you to do depending on your time. Alright, let's see if I can get this in here without getting on the staff. His head is also going to be gold. I'm going to check back for these antennae. Yep, they are also the gold color. Let's see if I can improve this light just a tad. I'm going to reach in here. Let's see, color space, color range. No, it doesn't look like I can really make that big of a difference here with the light. It's fairly dark when I'm looking at it here through the monitor. Alright. Well, we'll finish up this base coat and then I'll take another look. So it doesn't look like it's really an armor panel on his hand. Get that in there. I might brighten this up in post for you guys to see. In here. Grab that, just his hip right there. Same thing over here. I'm going to leave the spine the way it is. I want that to be that color. Then we're going to make sure we get a shoulder panel here. This other antenna. So these are for the command protocols. Originally, all of the models that were supposed to be like royalty, they were the ones that the nobles were going to have these command protocol things. They have eventually changed that in the rules because it was somewhat onerous to only be able to use these guys to get yourself command protocols through your army. And the reality is I just didn't use command protocols for the most part for my army. I play casually and I play mostly Crusade, and so it generally just wasn't worth the effort for such a low payoff most of the time, or at least that was my conclusion, especially again in casual games that were really just we're having a good time. We're not worried about being the most efficient. Alright, I'm going to check his staff again. Let's take a look. Yeah, it does look like this section up here is also that kind of gold cover. I am going to brace him right here. I'm going to get all of this. And then I'm going to go right up to there, but leave the rest of that. I'm going to come in here, grab that. We're going to flip him and do exactly the same. Alrighty. I'm going to come right up to that ball, and I'm going to leave that. Now, I think it probably should also be this kind of gold color, but this brush just doesn't have the fine detail in it to be able to get to that. And I know better. It's going to make a mess. So that looks pretty good. Come right here, grab that, grab this. Now these blades here are actually going to be painted white, so I want to be really careful not to get this color on there, because I'm going to have to come back and work it, and I definitely don't want to make more work for myself. Alright, here I am just kind of cleaning up bits. This is pretty dry on the brush now. You can probably hear it. It's also dry on the model. It's drying very quickly today. I'm just going to come down in here. That panel is fine. This area in the middle is fine as well. Alright. So that's looking pretty good. So I would say he now has a nice base coat on him, and because I did do that overspray here, the Zenithal with the metallic, any place I didn't get is going to look pretty good. For the most part, I've not used metallics in this. In fact, this is the first time you're seeing any metallics in this whole paint, the whole paint job here. I've preferred to do non-metallics because this brush is actually pretty good at it. Mostly because it's really good at layering in thin layers, but it can also stipple someplace where you need it to be brighter. I'm going to grab some of my black here, just a touch of water. That's too much. Alright, there we go. And we're going to come in and we're going to grab this staff. The staff should be nice and dark up there. I'm going to grab it here. Grab that there. Be very careful. The brush is fraying quite a bit. I don't want to accidentally touch something that I don't want touched. But now his staff handle is black. Then this stuff over here, I'm actually going to black as well. And we're going to come back on these. And the reason I'm doing this is I want it to match. The other parts of it was with a gray and not a metallic. And so I would like it just to be on him. I feel like these are probably more part of the throne than anything else. And so I am just going to go on with this thin, very watered down coat of black here. And I'll bring this back up with a metallic later. Or with non-metallics, I'm sorry, later. Alright, that looks pretty good. I did see one little spot here that I missed on the back, and it's actually this side right here. You can see that shiny bit that's hanging down. I do want to hit that with our brown here. And it's very possible I missed it on the other side too. Let's see if I can't kind of bend this staff out of the way. Oh, and it might be I just can't get to that little bit right there next to his knee. And that is indeed the case. So I'm going to leave that rather than get paint all over his knee here where I don't want it. So I don't think anyone's ever really going to see that. And if they do, well, it is what it is today. There we go. Alright, so his base coat here is done on this guy, as far as this Rhinox hide goes. The rest of these paints we're going to be layering in. I'm going to go ahead and grab this guy. We're going to increase the black here on the black stone. So one more thin coat, one more thin coat. And it turns out his staff is also this, so I'm going to go ahead and grab some of this thin down black. I'm going to get the thin down black right there. I'm going to avoid his hand. I'm going to come in, get that thin down black right there on the staff. Right there on the staff. Alright, there we are. Yep, I already hit that. Same thing for Scissoric staff. Gonna get that. So he is actually very fragile. Hopefully we don't have a repeat of the stairs incident here, where the stairs broke off. But his upper torso is very fiddly, and so it is entirely possible that the upper torso here breaks while I'm doing this. Even though the staff is kind of secured there, you can see he really is bendy. It's because he has one very, very small point of contact deep inside of him. And that's the only thing holding him up. Alright, so let's get another coat of black on these. And the process for this is going to be exactly as we did it before. So we're going to have a desaturated Goblin Green. We're going to come over that with Wizard Orb. We're going to go over that with Royal Cloak. And in the end, we'll come back with our Arid Earth and get all of our highlights there. Alright, cleaning all that out so that we have our black there. Alright, we're going to grab this next guy and we're going to do exactly the same thing. He's going to have all the parts that are going to be gold, base coated with Rhinox hide. We're going to, again, avoid any of the parts that are going to be the joints. We're going to leave them in their metallic state. His feet as well, we're going to make gold. You can see the feet being either way. They look kind of skeletal. So maybe they're supposed to be joints. But I don't know. He's just got the gold shoes on. I'm just going to end it with that little piece right there. Come in along the side here. Get that on. Same here. All right. That's going to be nice and interesting painting all deep down in there. Go ahead and get these pieces that are hanging off. I am being fairly gentle with these pieces. They're not really being held on by much. Go ahead and get that down in there. It looks like his hand also is not armored. There's no panel there, so we won't worry about that. Just worry about getting this panel here and this panel here. Go ahead and get the shoulder now. So this top panel is now going up, and I see now where I forgot to do these. His little umbilicals that are holding him to the throne. In the lore, these particular Necrons used to be kind of their own people. They kind of talked their own stuff and had their own ideas about things. But as they sat with Cesaric stuck to his throne, they eventually started to only speak the things that he wanted. So they seem to have lost a bit of their autonomy here. Alright, let's get in there a little bit on that. That's going to get highlighted up. You won't be able to see it very well, so I'm not going to really fret about that, the symbol of the Triarch that's on his chest. But I do want it to have the gold around it, so I will just do that. That's okay. This little bit in here, sure. I'm going to come in here, get this on his shoulder. Now there are quite a few coats now. There's the black under this, there's the metallic under it, and so I'm not terribly worried about this being a just completely opaque coat here. That doesn't really bother me, because I know whatever I miss, you're going to see some metallic, some true metallics, and that is totally fine. I'm not particularly worried about these guys. So same thing here. We're going to get these guys done. Now he has his eye in the middle, which I'm going to try and avoid. Just the darker you start off, the harder it is to build up that white, which we're going to use for his eye. So he will have, by default, a glow effect, since I can't get the brush in there to do much less. Alright, I'm going to grab some more of that paint. We're going to come in here. I'm going to catch this. So this part will be gold, along with the area surrounding this ball. At least right there. So we'll come in here. When we hit this with black, we'll fix that. And we'll come back in and have to hit it with white and fix it again. Grab a little more paint here. This is fairly thin down, so I'm not too worried about grabbing a bunch more. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to turn this so that I just get it there. Now, a lot of this is just coming down to brush control. It's being able to get your brush where you want it and just confidently kind of go here. This would take forever if you were just paralyzed by whether or not you're going to get some paint someplace that doesn't belong. The spoiler is you will, and you just have to be ready to fix it and not be too worried. You do want to paint boldly. Alright, you can really see the difference here between the black and the brown. That's very nice. We'll need that. Alright, I'm going to wash this out. We're going to come back and fix some of these little black areas that now have some of the brown paint on them. And we're going to be layering all of these paints on. So you can see we have quite a few paints here that are going to get layered down. So I am not super worried here about what we got going. So I do need some more black. So let's go ahead and grab some more black here. And we're going to water it down again, because I want to have a nice thin coat here. Grab that, just get that nice and watered down. Remove my excess, grab a little more, and then come in here, and I'm going to clean up this area I was just in. And I'm going to strengthen that color across the staff, and right there. And I'm going to strengthen it on the gem. So now we have 3 coats on our gem. So our gem's going to be really nice and dark. You're really going to see the difference here. I'm going to take that, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to do the exact same thing I did with the other. Probably only a single coat here. This doesn't need to be super crazy dark. It is going to be behind them, and so it's going to be very difficult to kind of see what this umbilical cord is doing. But at the same time, I do want to make sure I'm not leaving it out. I did notice a bit right here where I messed up this. I just want to grab some more of that, get that down in there, but I don't want to touch the little spinal thing. Whoop, let's get you back in frame. I don't want to touch the little spinal thing there. All right, there and there, and that's because you're looking dead on. There we go. All right, that's pretty good. So we got our base coat in for him. And now it's decision time. So I can keep going with just these 2 guys, or I can bring Cesaric in. I wanted Cesaric to be ever so slightly different, but I think the thing I can do to him that will make him different, to set him apart, is going to be to just add some more layers to him and make him have a little bit nicer of a transition between bits. But this part would not change. There would just still be the Rhinox hide here on him. So that's what we're going to do here. Since I do have a clean brush, I am going to take this opportunity just to grab some more of my black, strengthen that color on his staff handle, both sides here, and to touch the black stone up just a little more so that it's a nice dark color. But see, I want it to be real thin because I don't want, there's texture on this stone that I'm really hoping to use, and I don't want to fill in that texture with paint. That would be not good, because the rest of our bits, the rest of our pieces, the veneers and the pieces of blackstone that are on the throne, they have all that nice texture that was used. And so that is something that I want to make sure I don't obliterate. So that looks good. I'm just checking to see what this looks like here. I want to make sure I don't see too much paint. It's not dry, so I could pull some off if I needed to, but that looks fine. All right, let's grab some more Rhinox hide. Starting to get a little low. Give it a shake. I do like Citadel paints. I like Vallejo paints. I like Army Painter paints. But Citadel paints, they really, really want to separate on you. It is just what they do. So I'm going to grab a little water here. I'm going to make sure it is not super thin because this is a base coat, but I don't want it to fill in my details. So we're going to come in here, start on his leg. You notice they did start on their legs for the most part, and that's because generally the human eye is not drawn to the leg, and if something goes horribly wrong here, I feel like that is a much better place to be fixing than, say, his face. That would be a lot less good and would create a lot more work for me, as I would have to fuss with it to really make sure I got the face fixed. That's not where we want to be. We want to make sure we're using our time wisely. And if we're going to make errors, we want to make the right errors. We want to make the ones that we have a lot of control over how we're going to fix them, and a lot of control over the amount of time that we would need to invest to actually bring it back to what we know we'd be happy with. Alright, you can see I'm avoiding all of the joints here because I've already done all that good work with the other spray. Alright, and we're going to come in here and just get that. This will be gold too. these little leotard pieces or whatever they are that hang down from their belts or where their belts would be, they were particularly finicky as well. They definitely did not want to stay in place, and so that was quite an adventure with those, to not have a big chunk of glue hanging on them, but then also have them stay where I put them. So when you're building this guy, your mileage may vary, but whenever you build him, just keep in mind that might be a problem point. All right, I'm going to come in here. Oh, nope, not this piece right here, so I'm just going to rub that off. Boop, 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 boop. Because I want that to be as light as it can be when I go to do, so it's actually this center piece. There we go. So, and that's why we're doing it in this order, so we can always come back. I can always put another layer onto that and just live with that. But if this were in that next stage, that would be much more of a pain. So I'm going to come in here. Now that has that. All right. Now I'm going to brace this because it needs it. And I'm going to come in here and we're going to get this all painted up. Bring this down here. And so, again, I've said this several times during this, but it's worth noting that I'm able to do this with this particular model because GW actually took the time to make a model that was going to be easy to paint. So these spaces here that I'm just getting paint onto here, they're raised up. They were definitely designed with you painting it in mind, and you painting it with their heavy metal system. And so this makes it much easier for me to apply a kind of less precise system than that. Not that the heavy metal system is, requires a particular amount of, high level of skill, I should say. But this really does help when you're using like the wrong tool. It shows you how well you can still do this even given these restrictions. And I think that again is a testament to how well the model is designed and with the thought that they put into it when they made it. I'm going to try and get that little section right in there because this is mostly not going to be highlighted. Yeah, there we go. So I was trying to hit this little area right here that connects without actually touching the rest of him. So we're going to come in here and get all of this. I'm going to be bracing him right here because I am afraid I'm going to snap him in half, which would be less good. All right, avoiding the inside parts there. I'm going to sneak in here and grab the rest of him there. I'm going to sneak in here, grab the rest of him there. You can see I keep putting my finger on him here to make sure he doesn't snap. And I'm just going to continue on with these armor panels, just avoiding... I'm going to avoid this ball right here because I am going to make that into an OSL effect on him. Come along the back. Now, we won't really see the back of him because, actually, you know what? I think that would probably be a waste of time. So I'm just going to go ahead and non-metallic metal it. The reason is this big cloak is actually going on him now that I think about it. And so this will never, ever be seen once he's put into place. And it doesn't make sense exactly to paint an OSL effect inside the cloak, specifically with the assumption that people would know those balls are back there. That's just going to be confusing. Not that you couldn't do it, it's that no one who didn't build the model will know. Excuse me. Alright, we're going to continue going here. Just catching these armor panels. Again, this paint's pretty thin. You're seeing me make these kind of, the kind of strokes you wouldn't normally want to make, I think, on most of the models, because you're going to end up seeing brush strokes and it doesn't tend to give you a nice smooth coat. But here, you know, this brush is just only going to give so much, and so there's not really a reason to fret so hard about what it's going to leave behind here in this phase. We do look out though, because the brush is pretty soft, and so even if I am, you know, kind of hacking away at the model as it appears, it's not going to punish me too bad. And then just the back of his hand here. Same thing here, catch the back of his hand. Alright, let's take a look at our reference. Yeah, his crown and everything are that. There's a two-tone thing going on up here at the very top, but that's not going to show up for quite some time. Alright, so we're just going to catch his face here. Make sure we get all of this, because this is 100% where people are going to be looking probably right off the bat, is at this guy's face, because he is definitely the centerpiece here. And so we want to make sure that this particular area on the model, we spend as much time as is necessary to actually make it look pretty good. And you can see here, this little tendon thing is really what's holding it in place. In fact, I don't actually want paint like right there exactly, so let's very quickly wipe this out, and we're going to grab this off of here. There we go. Just for consistency's sake, I've not done this on any of the other models. There wasn't paint on the back, direct back of their heads, and so this is fine. That was just a little bit of over painting by me here. Alright, now that that's fixed up, let's just keep going. Not too worried about that. Those bits will be white eventually. Just going to come back here. Now that's going to get hit a few more times, but I'm going to keep putting the black back on it, so I have to do less work in the very end. Alright, looks like a little piece of fuzz right there. Let's grab that with our brush. That will eventually be problematic. Excuse me. Allergies are not working with me today, even though there's snow on the ground. So probably time to change the house filter. Alright, so now we have our first layer of base coats on all of our guys here. So we're going to keep on going. We're now going to be layering on Steel Legion Drab. So this is a brown that really doesn't have a lot of red in it, which is great. This first color, though, does. This is Rhinox Hide, and it definitely is a red brown, but it's very, very dark, and it's going to give us a nice foundation to work from. But from here on out, we're not going to go with anything that has reds in it. So we're going to grab this Steel Legion. I'm going to put it there. You can see it's a very light brown color. And you can make up your non-metallics any way you want. You can decide that, you know, you want a really kind of warm gold, you want cold gold, you can even add a small amount of blue or green to it, and that'll really make it much colder. But in this case, I do want these guys to stand out here as being just kind of cold. I've said it a few different times, but that's basically the end of it. Like, when you're working with these guys and they're sitting on the throne, I want there to be a big difference between these guys and the rest of the throne. I want them to really stand out by color and by kind of what ultimately they look like when you hold them against there. Alright, so we're just going to bring this up here on each one of these pieces. This is going to be relatively quick here because we're just dry brushing the panels here just to bring it up just a hair. This is just going to really help with our our kind of slow transition here to having brighter colors. I'm not going crazy with this at all. I think too much of this and you really start to kind of feel the copper effect. This is just to start the process of bringing these up. I'm focusing that there, getting that in there, and you're already starting to see some of the details kind of pop out with this dry brush of this color. And that's great. And what you're seeing is just the difference between the really dark Rhinox hide and this much brighter, but still dark, Steel Legion drab. Drab is even right there in the name. Yep, and there we go. So you can see now the difference between the two. You can see how much nicer that pops out there with just a really light coat of the Steel Legion drab. And we're going to do the exact same thing on the next guy. Pull that off, and I'm just going to check that again. Yep. I didn't check the other. I was pretty confident in it. If you're ever wondering whether or not you've got too much, too little, put some on the back of your thumb. Check and see if you can see the brush strokes, or just in general how much paint you've got. And that should really help. You can also tell on your palette here, or on your piece of paper, however you're doing it. Just bring this out on his feet. And we're just putting this everywhere. This is not something I'm really trying to concentrate necessarily right on the top portions. After this color, we'll start to just kind of focus on the upper portions of the model. But this is just getting us rolling all around, because it's a way of kind of bringing out these details, but without adding too much brightness to the underside of things. All right, his arm is a little squirrely too. A little scary. All right, and now we have the both of them. That Steel Legion drab applied. And now we have Sazerac himself. Go ahead and start bringing this up. A little bit. We don't want to go too much on him. He is quite tall, so we do have a little more space to work with, more volumes here. So I will concentrate this more at the top of these big armor pieces, just because I have the space to work with, and you will be able to notice it. The other guys are kind of too short. You're not really going to notice whatever I do there. All right. In a moment, it will start to matter exactly the direction my brush is going. Currently, it is not the end of the world to have things go a few different directions, but in a moment you're definitely going to want everything going the same way. That way you can make sure you're only hitting the top parts of things where you know that's what you want. Oh, and looky here, I forgot to do this back portion, but in this case I'm not going to really worry about it. Again, he's got this huge cape, and you're never going to see the back portion of this guy here. All right. And that really, although you wouldn't think it, makes a huge difference here. Having this lighter brown color on. Make sure I didn't have too much there. Yep, that is way too much. Luckily that's the back. We won't be seeing that hand. And we mostly won't be seeing this, but the top of his shoulders will be visible. The cape doesn't go quite all the way around. So there we go. That's looking good. Alright, and now we have our first dry brush layer on of that Steel Legion drab. Next, we're going to go ahead and move up a layer. We're going to go to our Tan Glaze by Vallejo. So this is number 7831. I'm going to put this on our palette, and I'm just moving here in order. So this is not really, it's getting close to a mustard yellow. Close, but it doesn't have kind of the very, very strong yellow look that you would expect to see in that yellow that a mustard would have. Maybe this is more of a Dijon kind of thing. Maybe the one's like honey mustard kind of. All right, gonna let him dry. We're gonna just go in reverse order again, starting with this guy because this gives it the most time to dry here. This does need a little water. Oh, I see a hair on my brush. Always want to pull those off if you see them. That's going to cause you a problem. All right, now that's a little more moist. Get all the extra off here. And we can start coming in. So these are ones that I am going to start concentrating more on the top here. So I'm not going to go all the way down that. This is just going to slowly build up on my model. Because remember, we still have several layers to go here. We definitely want to make this, though, visible. So I'm coming around here. But I'm not going to go all the way under his leg here. Same thing here. I do want to make sure I get that in there, though, because this is the top. And so for this, I'm just going to kind of get that in. And this being a glaze, it is a little less intense, which is fine. It just means we might have to do two layers of this to get started. See, I'm really doing my best. I'm pulling down now for the most part, and I'm doing my best not to get this all the way around the pieces, just the pieces that are going to start being the brightest. And that immediately comes to life now with this glaze on it. Glaze that we are dry brushing. This staff will definitely have more than one coat here, just because we're trying to bring it up faster than the rest. It is the tallest part. That edge. All right. And now you can see just with one coat the difference here. I do want to get that down in there on his leg because there is light getting down there. I'm going to go just a little brighter here with this on his face and on his shoulders and at the tops here. Because this is still, we still got a ways to go here with these different layers. So I want to make sure that I have enough of this to work with, because each layer is going to be working with just a little less space. And if you make your space too small and you've got so many layers, you'll paint yourself kind of into a corner where you don't have enough real estate to keep adding your highlights, and it'll no longer have the effect you're looking for. Let's get that in there. There we go. So we definitely want to see that on quite a bit of the model here. There we go. So that's a bit stronger. That's what I'm looking for. All right, we're going to put him here, and we'll keep moving. So grab a little more, get some of that off. Start here on the staff in this case. And in this one, this is going to be tricky, so we want to pull it down without touching the stone. We spent so long putting our highlights on. There we go. And we'll grab this. Get on his arm here. Yep. And so, well, that was a lot. Spread that around. Tops there. We're not going to go all the way around his leg in this case. Pull that here. Catch the tops of his feet. We'll start working this in here. We'll go most of the way down, but not all the way down. Making sure we're pulling from the top to the bottom. I need a little more of this. Let's get some more of that tan glaze down on our palette. You can see right there. Make sure you can see that. I'm going to grab just a touch of water, get some of that off because that was too much. And go back in. And at this point, I do see that, you know, I am getting paint into the ferrule of this brush, but, you know, after this particular project, this brush will very much be done. And so we're approaching the end here. We're not there yet, but, you know, the end is kind of in sight. And so I am a little less worried now about it making the distance. I think we're going to get there. I was actually kind of worried. At one point I had bought some of these brushes just to kind of experiment with, and one of them kind of fell apart. Like the bristles fell out of the ferrule. And that was concerning as the brush is really not usable at that point. So I am glad to report this particular one did not have that problem. And neither has any of the other ones that I've done. That seemed to kind of be a unique problem that one had. Perhaps a manufacturing error. Alright, and I'm going to come back and give it just a little bit more at these top areas here. On the face. Down to there. And this is really just setting up our undercoats here for our future layers, making sure that these are nice and smooth and they're concentrated where we want them and not where we don't. Towards the tops. And that piece right there. That is definitely a piece that broke off in the past. His little piece here. Alright, now we'll do that. It's going kind of on the center and kind of on his face. Cool. We're making sure we're getting these tops pieces here because this is definitely where you'll be seeing quite a bit. And the staff, give that an extra layer there. It's really nice to be doing dry brushing here and not like wet blending and other things that require a lot of drying time. Alright, you can see here compared to Scissoric, he's just getting brighter and brighter. And we're going to come in and do the same dealio with Scissoric here. Get a bunch of that off, start here on the staff, bring the staff up. And again, being very careful not to touch the parts of the staff that I do not want to be touched. And get that on there, and that on there. I am bracing the staff from the other side. It's very kind of twitchy at this point. And just in case I haven't already mentioned that this is a pre-recorded one, just because I'm going to be traveling here in the next few days. That way, I still can have these available for you folks who are watching them on time, but I don't have to not do my travel plans for that to happen. Alright, still coming in here. So I don't know how much of his shoulders will really be visible. I know down in here it won't be, but we'll go ahead and take care of as much of it as makes sense here. His head will definitely be visible, so we'll want to make sure we get all of that. And we're starting to run a little low on this. So we'll come in here with our final bits. Oh, you can see my brush strokes. We're going to remove that. Final bits here. Just really strengthen this in the places that we know we're going to want it, especially around his shoulders, around his face. Bring this down in here, catch this. I'm going to brace this just so we don't have the oopsies. Catch the tops of his hips. And then straight down there, I'm going to go over the tops of his feet. Grab the last little bit of that glaze. Catch the tops of his feet here. And you can see this is really starting to kind of brighten up there. This is not really the video that we're going to talk about, or at least too much about like speculative highlights and other things. It's just something I'm going to kind of do as I go. But generally for something like this, if you really wanted to get it right, you would probably use a reference, unless you were very familiar with how this would work out. All right, I'm going to pull just a bit down here and here, just in case those are visible, although I don't think they will be. All right. So now, let's see. So we're about an hour in here, and we have gone through our first two base coats. And we're going to keep on keeping on here. We're going to put Cesaric down and go back to our first guy. Going to grab up some Flash Glitz Yellow, and we're going to layer that on through dry brushing. Oh, we're definitely going to shake this up. I'm going to mute real quick so I can put it on the paint shaker. All right, here we are back, and let's get this down on our palette. So we'll move one more over. All right, get that in. Gonna bonk the camera for good measure. All right, let's wash the brush out so that doesn't dry down in there. Go to our fresh water. And though this paint doesn't have, it's yellow, it's very bright, but it does not have any fluorescent dye, so I'm not really worried about contaminating everybody there. Just going to grab a touch of water, get some of that off, and mix that in there. Again, it's dry brushing, but you do need to have some moisture. Otherwise, it dries in the brush, and then it just doesn't work. All right. So we're going to start here. And now for the first time, this really starts to look golden. And you can see this definitely has a pale gold look to it, which is exactly what I was after. Come back on the other side of his staff, embracing this from the other side with my finger. And we're going to start to hit just the tops here. So this is the moment, because we only have 2 layers left. So with 2 layers left, we're definitely not going to be working this all the way under and around things. This is really starting to just be for this top area. I'm going to reach in here and try and get this on his leg, if I can. I can. Excellent. Alright, so now he's getting pretty golden. Make sure we get enough on these top areas here to really sell the idea that he's gold. And here I'm just smoothing this out on his leg. I see a few brush strokes. Alright. Catch this side here. Now the tops of these guys will be mostly visible. So we're gonna get that on there. Now we can see the difference here between these two. As they slowly become more gold. We're going to come right down here and catch that highlight. I want to make sure that this reads as being gold, but I don't want it to just be overkill here as we get further down. Strengthen that there. Strengthen that there, inside of there. Alright, and it's the top of his arm here, same here, this area. This is just adding a little more strength to this color, places that it definitely would be. Alright, there we go. I'm pretty happy with that. Let's go ahead and put him down. We'll move on to the next guy. So basically the same deal. I'm going to have that on there. We'll start at the top and then work our way down. Just making sure we get that on there without going overboard in the places that we don't want to be super golden yellow, because they're going to be, you know, places that are in a little bit more darkness. They're going to be places that have less light getting on them. Come in here with this. That's too much, I can tell. Test it on the back of my thumb. That looks good. That should still work there, and it does. Catch these areas on his staff. A little piece of something on there. Come around. Alright. Now I'm just going to brace the back of the staff. Oh, and look at that. I touched his arm. Alright, so I'll have to get in there and fix that. But again, these guys, they're very fragile. That's just the nature of these guys. So we're going to pull down here. We're only going about halfway down this spike, because that's really going to help sell that. His arm is kind of stuck inside of him, which is good. It didn't really fall or go anywhere. I got to go chase down. So that was nice. Alright, let's see how exactly that is on there. Oh, I can see right there, there's a joint, and then there's a piece that connects to his neck. That's probably the failure point. So I'm going to ultra careful. Come in here, knocking almost all of this Tamiya cement off, and I'm going to hit right here at his armpit, because anywhere this stuff touches, the paint will fail. And I am willing to bet this is him holding onto the rail. And so it could be that this is funky and that now he doesn't quite match up to the rail, because I knew I would have held him up there to get that to work in the first place. So it's possible I should have waited, but here we are. So we'll deal with the consequences of that later. Right. So this is looking pretty good. So here are these guys. They're looking pretty golden here. And now it's Cesaric's turn. Hopefully we don't break his arm off. Because of that little pause there, I am going to put this on really well, because we don't want this to get onto the paint. Because again, If it's on the paint's not on your model. Wash the brush out really well. Grab some of our flesh glitz, get some of that out, and then for him I am going to start a bit lower and be very careful about how I pull this down. I'm going to take a little more time on the Silent King himself. That mostly hitting the top. We'll bring this down too. Mostly trying to hit the tops of things here on this guy. A little less concerned with the other, but for him, just taking our time, blending all those strokes in. Same here, we're really just going after the tops of this area here. And let that just kind of work its way down into the other colors. These shoulders should be visible, so we're going to spend a little bit of time making sure those are good. Blending that in. Same thing here, going to blend that down. Same in here, just coming down, making sure to keep our brush oriented correctly. Alright, this is going to be kind of the brightest points on him, so we definitely want to make sure we get enough on here, because this part of him should be pretty yellow. Let's remove that. And I might have to come back and repaint the back of his head just to get it back to the way it should be. But that is okay. We won't really see that much of his leg here, but we'll catch that. Same thing here. The top of this should also be gold. Now we're going to grab this up in here. Again, all of this right here is going to be painted white very, very carefully. But I would rather have the white overspray or over paint over brush onto this than have this gold color over paint onto the white. That will cause us more problems, because one can imagine the light source kind of bleeding over onto him, but one cannot really imagine the metal bleeding over. That doesn't make a ton of sense. Alright, he's looking pretty good. Alright. Oops, bunked there. Just going to strengthen this right around his collar and right around his shoulder here, as these are going to be spots that are the very tallest part of the model. So if the light were coming from the top, this would be the strongest, which it kind of is in this case. All right. Let's see how we're going here. So he's looking pretty good. Have the non-metallic gold on here. So we're gonna turn this one more time. Oh, I'm gonna catch there, and we're gonna get our Dorn yellow. So I am gonna not pause, but I am gonna mute this real quick. That way I can put this back on my shaker. As you can see, it's separated pretty hard right there. All right. Here we are. This very up. That is just like a Citadel paint to do that. Let's grab that from back here where it should not be. Unfortunately, Citadel has really gone all in on these pots being the way Citadel paint looks. And so they are probably not changing these pots anytime soon, even though they are a bit aggravating. So let's go ahead and wash that out to get whatever little bit of extension to our brush's life we can muster here, so it doesn't dry inside the ferrule of the brush. Just wiping this out here. Alright, pretty clean. We'll go back. I believe he was the first. Try and put them in order on the side here. That way I pick them back up in the proper order so that they are the driest they can be. Alright. Here we are. This brightens everything up just right away. Only bringing this into mostly the brightest areas. Because this is going to be basically one step away from our whitest, our lightest. Try and get in there. Yep, that was just enough. Hit the top of his foot, but not the sides. Get this in there, and his shoulders will be visible. So we're going to make sure we get this on the shoulders. And down in there, in this bit. He is looking down, so we don't want this to be totally all over his face there. Get that into this little crevasse. Alright. Catch his shoulder. We caught this side, we caught this side. Caught this area on here. This is probably the brightest area, head and shoulders of this guy. We're going to make sure that gets on there, and you can see now the difference. Letting that trail back into that. We're going to keep going on this guy. Again, we're using less and less as we go, just because we need less and less here on the actual model itself. Coming around the shoulders, we're going to leave that little area in there, because that's going to be a little bit darker. It's got the overhang over it. Catch his legs here. Same thing in there. Catch the leg, catch the top of the feet, but not the sides. Catch the top of this area here on the staff. Catch the pinnacle here of this, letting it fade back to our previous colors. Catch that side, top of the arms. This is really just the very top parts of the model here, whatever will be the brightest. That here, it looks like his arm has kind of settled with the glue that we just put on it. Alright, that was the top there of the staff. We'll have to come back and fix it with the black. That's okay. Alright, so we have kind of this interesting mix of metallics and non-metallics on these guys, which is kind of fun. So we can see these guys here, they're really getting their gold vibe on. And then here's Cesaric over here, who hasn't gotten this treatment yet. Right, wipe most of that off. And we're going to come in just at the tops here. letting this fade. And this is where we're just taking a little bit of extra time with Sazerac here, making sure that this effect is well done on him, because he is, of course, the centerpiece. It's coming down. We're making sure not to totally get rid of what we've done before, because we want to see that. That's that volumetric highlight that I keep talking about, where you got someplace you're going, and you can see it get there slowly. Alright, same thing here on the staff. I'm going to pull that down there. Very top of that, very bottom there. Same thing here, catching the top of that area. Alrighty. So now you can see they're really getting their gold vibe on. Excellent. We're going to strengthen that just a tad right here on the very brightest parts. Again, this paint dries nearly instantly because of how little it is we're using. So yeah, he's doing really well. Oh, you can see his whole body flexes. Yeah, he is not designed to be chilling out on his own somewhere. All right, let's wash this out. Now, I think what I want to do here is I do want them, right now they're looking very, very pale. A little too pale. So, I think I'm going to come back with just a little bit of my flash glitz on top of this, especially in the top portions. So yep, I have enough here. And I'm going to add just a little bit of this back in, and that should give me a more golden appearance. So this is going to be the highlight in here, and you can see it just kind of turn yellow versus this kind of pale color. And that's what I'd like here. I'd like it to actually be a golden color versus this very, very pale color. But yeah, that's perfect. Now we're going. And that we had just lost a little bit of where we wanted that color to end up. So this is bringing it back to yellow gold. Yeah, that's very nice. It doesn't need a lot. You can probably see the difference here. Yeah, just in warmth. This adds a tad bit of warmth back to it. Because I didn't think, it was starting to not read as gold anymore. It's kind of the issue, I think. So we're just going to put just a little bit of this yellow back in. Not a ton, but just enough. Yeah, there we go, to where we read. To where we read as gold and not as whatever else this could read as. Alright, and last for this guy right here. The last little bit of this golden color here. I'm going to brace his arm, because of course he had a little oopsie. Alright, get in there. I just want this to read a little bit more golden. Alright, and I do believe they are. They're now reading the way I want. So to really finish this off here, we're going to finish up with our white, but we're not going to do that right away in case I need to come back and fix anything. Right now we're going to turn back to our blackstone. He doesn't have any blackstone, so we're going to go ahead and put him down, but these two do. We'll start with this guy right here. And so here we need to make up the exact same mix that we've done on all of our previous blackstone, but we're going to be able to do it relatively quickly. So let's just mix them all here. So we have our goblin green, and we're going to desaturate this with some black. So we're going to come in, darken that up with just a touch of black. It doesn't take much for that. And then we're going to mix it together here with just a touch of water. Wipe some of that out, and now we'll mix it in. That needed a little bit more black, so I'm going to add that now. Oh, you know what? This just isn't shook. So I'm going to mute you real quick and put you. There we go. All right, let's try this again. Bring that black. Okay, now we get, there we go. I just want a very, very dark green, just like we had before. Okay, I'm gonna wipe all that out. And we don't need a ton of this because you can see where we're going with it. So I'm just gonna pull this right in here. This actually has too much water in it, so this is an example of where I messed up just a little bit. So we're going to remix this here rather than wait for that to do its thing. So I'm going to take just a little bit of goblin green and a little bit of black here, and we're going to try again. And so sometimes you're going to mess up your mix, and that's okay. You just redo it rather than just make do, because you're going to notice and you'll remember and you'll be sad. So pull all of our green in here. All right, there we go. So that is more like what I want. I'm going to put just a little bit of green back in this. That looks like a lot, but it's mostly a bubble. There we go. Okay. So let's wipe a good bit of that out, and we'll grab this. So here we go. That's what I'm looking for. So a very dark green color, and we'll leave it black on the other side here. All right, come in here with this very dark green color. There we go. And against that black, that's really all we want. It's very, very subtle, just like it was the last time, but it is something that you will notice in the end. And so we want to take our time with that. We're going to come in here now with Wizard Orb. So I'm going to put some Wizard Orb right here. And I'm going to pull just a tad of this paint into it as well. This, in fact, I'm going to grab some of that. This is going to give us a few more steps that we can take. There we go. All right, get most of that out. Let's take a look. I'm going to touch it. Yep, it's completely dry because there was very, very little paint there. And I'm going to pull that down there. And we're going to stipple it in at the very bottom here because I want to blend it just like that. Same thing here. I'm going to come in. We're going to kind of stipple this in. I just tried the dry brush. It's too small a surface for that. Too small a surface to really dry brush effectively. This might be a little different, so we should probably be able to. There we go. Yep, we can definitely get in there with this because we have the space to work in. Oh, let's get you back in frame. Just following that around. All right. There we go. Now we're going to take some pure Wizard Orb. Okay, we'll switch back to this guy. And we'll put this on here. You can see there. I'm just trying to get this stippled in. I don't want it to be consistent across this stone exactly. And that's perfect there because we're going to have to put some more stuff in. Same thing here. We're just going to get this in, give it the hint of this around. Yep, same thing. Making sure to brace it from the back, but without touching the area I just painted, because that would be bad. All right. Wash that out, and we're going to keep on moving up. We're going to hit it with Royal Cloak. And this is the exact same process that we went through when we were doing the stones that were the Menhirs that were on their side of it. I'm going to grab a little bit of this Wizard Cloak here, mix it into our Wizard, or I'm sorry, what was this? Royal Cloak into the Wizard Orb. Excuse me. Just so we don't have such a large step change. And we'll kind of do the same thing, and then we'll grab some of that pure again. I'm going to concentrate this mostly towards the top here, although I will let it roll towards the bottom. There we go. You can see I'm adding a little extra texture to it as well. In this case, same thing here. That gets in there and adds that. There we go. I'm going to add just a tad more along this edge here to help define it. There. So that's the Wizard Orb mix, and now we're going to come in with just a little bit of pure. Same thing here. This is really going to be at the top here and along that edge. This is that pure Royal Cloak, just dabbed in there. And then these pieces don't necessarily have like a place where they want to really be like a lot stronger than another. So we have that in there. Now we're going to let these dry pretty well at this point, because our next step is going to be a highlight with Arid Earth. And I don't want to pull any of that around. That would be very bad. And so here we are now with the two pieces of Blackstone. And so then we're going to save that Arid Earth highlight for when we're done with our next step. So here, I'm going to take this black and I'm going to clean up any spots here that I had overpaint with the gold color. And so this is just the cleanup so that we can do our next step proper. That all looks good there. Got a little bit on his hand here. That's fine. And just looking at him, it might be here that our joints are too bright. So what I might do here is come in with some Nuln Oil, and I might give this a very, very thin glaze of Nuln Oil to bring all of this down, because what I don't want is for his hand to be brighter than his face. And we do have a final highlight to add here, but I'm looking at this now, and like his pelvis. Look how bright his pelvis is right there. That should be deep inside the model. And in this case, it looks brighter than the other, reads brighter. And that's not what I want. So I think this is also going to need a coat of Nuln Oil on these. So before I move further on the rest of these pieces, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to grab my Nuln Oil. This is Agrax, which I don't want. Let's see. GW did recently change their Nuln Oil formula. That is definitely controversial. This is the old formula. It is the one that I am familiar with. And so it's the one I'm planning to use here. So I just shook that up. I took a little bit. And again, this is not something you would ever do with a brush like this. This brush is going to grab so much of this. It's going to be very difficult to work with. You would definitely be doing this with a smaller brush, one that was usually dedicated to this purpose. Because this, no matter what you do, has very low surface tension. It is designed to crawl up and inside of your miniature. And so it will also do the same to this brush. So I'm going to wipe some of that out. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to hit these areas here that I would like to be darkened down. So this, I believe, is probably going to do what I want. And indeed it is. And I think it's really, for the most part, like these hands that really just have quite a bit of shine to them that I don't want. Same thing in here, quite a bit of shine that I don't want. And then for these, we'll do the same, just one more coat of darkness there. So yeah, that really brings that down. I'm going to bring his kneecap and his area right here down as well, just to find that out. This is all going to be painted white, so I'm not worried about that. And then this little area. There we are in this. There we go. So we're just getting down in there to remove that shine. So now, just on him, this reads much darker with his hand, and that's what I want. I still want to be able to see it, but it shouldn't be like the shiniest part and the brightest part. So we're going to do the same thing here. It's possible there's a little hole in there, and so I'm losing some of this, but that's okay. I'm going to grab that, add a little more to my palette, hit the camera for good measure, and we're going to come in here with the Nuln Oil. There we go. And the same in here is going to be very tricky to get not all over my paint, but I'm just going to save it for the spots that I think are the most problematic. And down in there definitely is. Same thing there. Same thing here. Fingers. Get that on here as well. And this is just removing that shine. He's just too bright in places he shouldn't be. There we go. And then that right there is too bright too. Alright, that looks good. So, now we've dulled his hand down, removed that from the webbing. There we go. Just a little too much. Perfect. Alright, so I'm happier with that. Let's grab the last guy. And yep, he still has some very shiny hands. We're just going to bring that shine down there and here. His hand is okay. And that is just from originally, I was going to do these guys quite a bit differently before I'd ever thought about streaming or having some other, challenge stuff going on with these guys. I was just going to paint them my normal way for the rest of my Necrons. But this struck me as something interesting and fun, and I thought it would be fun to do through the store. And there we are. That is much better. Now, when I look at him, yeah, so the hand is not brighter than the collar, which was a problem. Alrighty, so these pieces of Blackstone have now dried because we spent that time working that little problem out. Gonna take our Army Painter Arid Earth. Gonna add a little to our palette. And we're going to have this as a final highlight to our Blackstone. Once we're done with this final work on the Blackstone, then we can paint the areas that are supposed to be white. So we're going to grab this. Are supposed to have the, the Necron glow sword effect. And we have two different directions we can take with that, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that when we get there. So remove some more of that. All right. And so this just lets all of that kind of pop right there. Same thing here. Just highlights those edges out. We're going to do the same here. There we go. And that looks pretty nice. This might have just a tad more than I want here. So I'm going to bring it down just a little bit, pulling in just a little bit of, whoop, what was that? It was Wizard's Orb, just along the bottom here for this. Same thing there. I'm just going to pull that color back down, let it be a little brighter on top. And so we'll do that here as well. bring that in there. Let's make that a little stronger towards the bottom. There we go. All right. Yep, I'm liking it. Here we are. Have our black stone, have our gems, have our guys that are gold. Have that really nice comparison here now between the gold that is on them and that blue that is on there. Cold, still both cold, but this definitely gives us a little more to work with as far as visual interest. One moment. All right. Just had to sneeze there. I thought that would not be something y'all would want to hear. All right. So our stabs are good. We're going to come in here and give that just a little bit of work with a gray. So I'm going to mix a medium gray of equal parts white and black here. And then we're going to apply this to those stabs because it has nice texture on there that we want to see. We don't want it to be crazy, but we want a nice, this mid-tone gray there to bring that out. And this will be dry brushed in, so we want to be nice and careful here with how we're getting it in. We don't want to touch anything else. There we go. So we can see we're starting to do that. There really isn't anything that's ever pure black, because if it is, you really can't see it. And this also helps to sell. So we got that, and now we got that on there. Oh, let's make sure I did the other side of Sazerac staff. Oh, I didn't. Look at that. Moving a little too fast. There we go. Can even hit this on this side too. Not that anyone will ever see it, but bring out the stuff no one will ever see. This is the classic I've painted the inside of the rhino thing. Alright, we're going to bring this up just a little bit, and all I'm doing is I'm mixing just a little bit more of this white into the gray mixture that I've already made, just so it's a little bit brighter. I don't want to go too crazy here. I'm definitely not going up to like a pure white, but I'm making maybe 2 step changes at once here so that I have kind of a lighter gray. And this is going to be just what highlights this out here along this edge to give me that nice highlight there. And same for the back area there. All right, and we're going to do this on his staff. Also helps to cover up any sins here with this yellow paint. And on his staff. Make sure we catch this area here. And with this one, I'm actually going to pull this across as well on this. So now it should match pretty well, because this is the step change kind of that the rest of that has. I'm skipping in a middle part here because it just doesn't matter. You're not going to be able to see it back here. This is just so that this part doesn't have a kind of glaring difference to it than the rest. Alright, so now we have our stabs highlighted. So now you can see all the stabs. You get that nice detail of the circle and lines that are on there. Not super duper fancy, but it is enough. Let's take a look at our reference. It looks like there is on Sazeracon's staff a little ball there. So now we're going to start putting the white in. And so I wanted to make sure this little tiny ball here in the center is also going to be part of an OSL effect. So here's the moment that we have a choice. We can either paint these stabs white, the part that's going to be the Necron blades. You can either start white and go black, and that is going to give you a better effect. I think it makes it pop a lot more. But the downside of this is if you mess up, you cannot fix it. Not easily. You'll have to repaint everything or pull the paint off of it, because you'll still see wherever you put darker paint over the white. If you repaint it white, you'll still see it. So this is a decision to make. And I think for the purposes of this example here, what we're going to do is paint them black, and then we're going to move them up to white. So we're going to have a non-metallic metal effect. This is going to be the classic every other, like skip back and forth, the ladder effect that's going to be on them. And so it should give us a very reasonable Necron blade effect for us. And that's great, because that's what we're going to be going for here. So right now it has been, let's see, it's been 1 hour and 40 minutes. So I think I will go ahead and paint these black here, and then after these are painted black, we'll probably be out of time. And this is going to be glazed black in. We're going to do a couple of glazes here because we don't want there to be texture on these blades. We want to just have what is there. And then once we have these in black, we can work up for the rest of it. So I'm going to do that, grab a little water, get rid of some of the water, mix that in, and have a nice thin black. Get rid of the extra. I am mixing with this same brush. So now we're going to come in and we're going to glaze this in. And we're going to be very careful because we don't want to get this on any of the previously finished bits. That would be very bad. Muy mal. Just coming in here. Make sure up. I don't have you in the frame. So we're just glazing this black onto this, being very careful to avoid anything we've already done, because it'll be at this point very difficult to fix that. Not impossible. Nothing's ever impossible to fix. It's just we don't want to do it. So we're glazing this black in, being very careful, especially given all the limitations of this brush. Getting back in there to fix that would be quite a chore. I'm going to hold this way. And I'm going to come and let that balance, not balance, I'm going to let it brace against my thumb or against my palm here. So now we have glazed black in, and we're going to come along the edge. I'm going to catch this area here. And so you could make an argument that, you know, I am going to paint quite a bit of this a lighter color. Why not just leave some of that there? Well, because then I have a lot less control. And if I decide I want to have an effect one location, and now I have left it, it makes that much, much more difficult. So this blade is now black. Go ahead and grab his. This is also now going to be black, so we'll glaze this in. I'm going to grab a little more black, wipe that off. It's important for this to have not a lot of paint, because it's a fairly thin glaze. We might have to do 2 coats, which is totally fine. I'd rather do lots and lots of coats and have it turn out the way I want than try and go fast and then have it turn out not the way I want. All right, let's make sure we're in frame here. So I'm just coming here and I'm glazing this in, making some pretty smooth strokes here. And this might look like a wash, but it really is just very, not very, it's medium thin down black paint, I would say. Coming in here, up, touch the very tip. This is okay. That very tip right there is going to be easy enough to fix. If I got it down the side of it, that would be not good. And definitely make that more challenging. All right, so now we have a black coat on that one. And we're going to get that in there. We're going to wipe some of that away because we had too much. I'm going to brace this against my finger. I'm going to just push the brush in there. And we're going to glaze this across the rest. That other side's actually fairly dark, just because of the way the zenithal fell. But we're going to come in here Be very, very careful. So I'm just going to kind of use a technique where I push the brush towards it, being very careful not to get it onto this yellow portion. There we go. That's glazed in there. I'm going to come to the back, do the same. Just going to brace that little area right there. And we're going to come in here, very careful. I'm going to push the bristles towards where I want to end. Go ahead and pull it around. Being very careful not to get that on my yellow. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to kind of cock this at this weird angle. And I'm going to push this in here. Same thing, going to push the bristles towards. Need a little bit more paint. Because I can see right here this edge I'm not quite catching, but the bristle, there it goes. So now I caught that. So now I can glaze this in here. Yep, and look at that. He finally gave way. He thought about it the whole time. So we'll fix that real quick. In this case, I am going to fix it with just a little bit of glue. So we're going to go right on here. And when you do this, you want really the barest minimum of glue. You do not want a lot. So I'm not entirely sure if that broke or, whoop, it's about to break. If it broke or if it moved in a weird way there. But I'm going to get this, yep, exactly where I want it. And then I'm going to hold it, let it stick. Yeah, just like that. And then I'm going to hold it in place for just a moment. There we go. Sorry, I had to look very, very closely down in there. And as soon as this kind of sets, I'm going to let him go. I'm going to let him sit over here. And again, these particular models are really, really finicky. And so you should expect these to break in this manner if you put them together using not a crap ton of glue. And for this, we're going to come back and we're going to glaze in one more again. So we do need to come in here with this. And so I'm going to wait on him. But we're going to glaze in this. So we have a nice dark starting point here. And you can see this second coat of glaze is much darker than the first. And again, you can choose to go white to black or black to white. Black to white, starting with a black undercoat, is so much more forgiving than the white one, even though the white one, I feel, will give you better results. I'm just going to come in here, making sure not to touch that piece right there. There we go. And glaze this in here. So we want a nice dark undercoat to build up, or a nice dark undercoat to work from, I should say. We'll be building up grays to pure whites. And these are those trans-dimensional blades that Necrons have on everything. Basically like lightsabers, although the rules don't necessarily lend them that kind of a thing. You know what, I'm going to come down here. I realize I forgot to glaze this one in, so I'm going to glaze this one in really quick. This is being held in place by the tape at the very bottom, so I'm not worried about this breaking here. Alright, this is a little funky angle here. Let's get that in. Be very careful. I have so many little hanging threads here. It'd be very easy for this to go wrong. It's going to be very difficult to do this once I have the whites and stuff, because of the direction you got to come when you do these. All right, let's see. He seems to be okay. So I'm going to chance just quickly glazing this in here. Some very light strokes. We do want to bring this to the edge as much as we possibly can. Same deal here. Just going to brace that. Going to get you guys back in frame. I'm going to glaze this in as well. We're going to turn it, and we're going to start from this direction and glaze this area. I'm going to grab just a touch more paint, wipe some of that out, keep on going. And same on this side. I'm going to brace it very, very carefully, like so. All right. And I'm going to touch the very tips here with some black, because that's where I messed up. Or not I messed up, that's what I messed up by poking at it like that. All right. So here we are. We now have our three guys. They have all of, let me get this little frame off. There we go. They have most of their base coats in. What's missing here is the thing for the OSL and the Necron blades. And so we've been at it for almost 2 hours here. So we're going to call it for today. And you can see what we've done. So we've put in all of our gold here. The guys are now golden. We need to put in our whites that are going to work for our OSL effects or object source lighting. They're going to come from several objects on these staffs, mostly small balls. And then we need to fix the blades. And so those blades we're going to work up from this black through grays to whites. And we're going to have those cool effects that you normally see. In fact, we'll bring back him one more time, and you can see these kind of darker and lighter spots on the blade. I tend to do those even more intensely. This is done on here. If you go and look at GW, you can see they have done this using glazes, essentially, what they've done. And so they have like Nuln Oil over these colors, and they keep glazing things in and bringing it up. And we're going to do it a little bit differently. And I'll show you that in the next one. So thank you all for being here today. This is a pre-recorded one, so if you are watching this on Twitch, I have not been live. Hopefully I mentioned that enough times during the stream. And I will hope to see you the next time. Have a good day, folks.